Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Molly,
I'm Michael.
and today we are going to be talking about Traitors, episode 7. And this one was a good episode. I felt like we got a lot in this, so I'm excited to talk through it.
I'm very excited. It was an episode that it was different than I expected the episode to be, but it was very good in a different way. So I'm very excited to talk through it all.
Yes, well, let's get started then. And in the beginning of the episode, we see everyone arriving to the Black Banquet. So, of course, everyone had to show up in their outfits. So, did you have any favorite outfits?
I loved Rinna's.
Yeah.
I thought I think it's maybe controversial. Maybe not everybody loved it, but I thought it was just so perfect and dramatic, and it was very Rinna. And I think everybody, for the most part, there were a couple ones that I was like, they maybe could have done better. But for the most part, I thought everybody looked great. I loved Candace's that headpiece she
I
had. I thought
know.
was so
That was crazy.
was incredible. I thought that who else did I like? I think that I mean Rob was very Rob.
Yeah.
It was very overalls chic, I guess you could say. What were some of yours?
I feel like Candace stands out to me the most with her headpiece that was like a, I don't know, crown gold aspect. I don't even know
Mhm.
how to describe it. Just headboard is what you said. I guess that kind of counts. But yeah, I don't know. That was just crazy. I'm like, is this comfortable for her to be wearing that? But
Oh, definitely not.
fashion is pain. So
Exactly.
it was great to see everyone showing up in their outfits. Of course, they had to for the traders, especially for this banquet.
Yeah.
Um,
Mora's was another one with
oh,
her hat. It was giving
yeah.
like very remember when I think we covered this episode of Real Houses of Beverly Hills last year where they went to like a surrealism party
Oh, yeah.
and like Dorit was wearing that big hat and I thought it was giving that to me and I thought that was very interesting.
I agree. Those different like shaped hats are cool to see.
Mhm.
But yeah, but I mean, the big part of this banquet was how Lisa Rinna had to wear the amulet and she had it pinned to her collar. And we're trying to see of who's going to touch this, who's going to be killed in plain sight. And she was talking with Kristen, Jam Jam, Natalie, and she decided that she was going to murder one of them and having them touch the amulet. So she pretends that the pin opened and asks that one of them put it back in. And in the moment, we don't know who touched it. They kind of edited it in a way that could have been any of them. But then we did learn that someone did touch it. And obviously later on we know who it is. But in this moment, what did you think about it? If like how she was able to get someone murdered?
I thought she did a really good job with making it seem normal. And I mean, to not go too far ahead, but that that wasn't even the reason that people suspected her
No.
afterwards. Like nobody brought that up at all, the amulet. And so I think that in that sense, she did a phenomenal job with that. In the moment, Natalie was the only one that we saw reach, it seemed like, for anything. So in that moment, I thought, oh no, it's Natalie. And then she becomes such a big factor or focus later on with the serum or whatever they call it. And that to me, I kept focusing on her because I thought that she was the most likely one that was murdered. So they did trick me in that regard. I was not expecting who it ended up being.
I agree. I thought it could have been Natalie in that moment. Just also, I mean, I also thought Jam Jam because of how much he was talking about the amulet on
Yeah.
her. I was like, okay, maybe they're foreshadowing this in a way. But in the editing, it did seem like Natalie got the closest. But they definitely wanted us to think that so that there was that aspect of suspense of when she took that potion to reverse the spell or whatever it is that that would have helped her, but it ended up
The antidote,
not.
that's what they called it. Yeah.
What is it called?
The antidote.
Antidote. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
no matter how many years of reality TV I watch, I will still get tricked by the edit every now and again. And this was one of those times where I thought I was being very smart by thinking, "Oh, Natalie, we saw Natalie reach, and maybe they wanted us to just kind of overlook that." But no.
I know. They trick us and when we don't expect it. But then everyone sits down at the table and Alan walks in and lets them know that a murder in plain sight occurred. And everyone's shocked, like, how could this happen? But as we're trying
As
to,
if they weren't
yeah,
all assuming that that was going to be the case here.
I know. I mean,
That
they
was
all were
funny to
kind of
me.
speculating something was
Right.
happening. They're like the cards, the like all the things that are happening in the room, like keeping an eye on things. So to hear everyone being shocked was a little bit like, okay, you're not actually shocked. Um,
But they all know the
but
game.
then there were the 2 vials of antidotes that were available to take to save people in case they ended up getting the murder. They would have been safe if they were right into who took it. So, what did you think about this twist? Did you like it?
Yeah, I thought this was interesting because it allowed for at least some gameplay. And I think that I wish that Rob Sesternino had had this available to him as well, especially because he didn't even have to actually do anything in order to be murdered in plain sight. Whereas at least here, Jam Jam had the opportunity to, he was murdered because of something that he did. And he wasn't careful enough with looking out for those things. But even so, I still think that I like when there is an opportunity for your gameplay to save you and your relationships to save you. And I liked this because I think that it wasn't even so much about who thought they could potentially have done something. I think everybody, for the most part, a lot of them probably thought, oh, maybe this little thing that I did was what got somebody murdered. So I think that it's what really this was about was how are your relationships? Are you able to convince people to allow you to be immune here? That they will give themselves up as an opportunity, as vulnerable to be murdered in order for you to have safety. And so it was interesting to me to see kind of who they were more willing to allow to have this than others.
Yeah, I agree. I like this twist because it made it so they had to think through like what happened tonight, like where could this have happened, and who could have been asking for whatever you did, like because the turkey came into it, like this, like it was like
Yeah.
okay, like everyone got turkey, like what do you mean? But it was
But
interesting to
that
hear.
was weird to me. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh
That
yeah,
was weird to me because it I think that very easily they could have said whoever the first one to be served turkey was murdered. Like I think that there's a very real chance that it could have been something that multiple people did, but whoever was the first one is the
yeah,
one who's murdered. So
that's
like
true.
if it was the kiss, she could have kissed multiple people, but it was just whoever did it first. Like I think that I understand why people would be scared, even if someone else could say, "Well, I ate that too." I think that there's still a chance that that could have been it.
Yeah, that was a reasonable one, I thought. And the tarot cards that were around, like there were multiple instances that could have been a murder in plain sight that made it also interesting for the cast to try to figure that out. And so that made it for some excitement at the table of who's gonna get it and added some drama to the episode. So I liked it.
Yeah, and I like that they added different elements into the room, like the cards and other things that easily could have been red herrings to
Yeah.
distract people from what really was the amulet. So I like that they did that because I think it added some paranoia intentionally to get people to not know what really the thing that they had to be careful of was.
Yeah, I know. And obviously, we were kind of hinting at this, but Natalie was worried because Stephen cut her roast. And that was one of the reasons why she was like, oh, now I was murdered. Like, I need the antidote. And then obviously, then they're talking more about the turkey and how Tara was like, well, I also got it. So that was funny to see everyone's deliberations there. And then obviously, like the cards came into it with Stephen choosing Kristen's face, and that being an issue of like now Kristen's like, okay, now I need to drink one. So it came down to also Tara and Natalie going at it of who should get it because they both got served the turkey. and they don't know if that's a factor or not. But Natalie really thought it could have been her, so she wins it kind of unwillingly, I guess, to Tara's dismay. She was like, "All right, like I'm not gonna fight anymore." But did you think it was right for Natalie to be so aggressive for wanting the antidote?
I think she overdid it by a lot, but I don't think that it was. I don't know that I would think that she was a traitor because she was doing that. I just think that I would probably be more annoyed than anything else.
Yeah.
But those relationships in this game are very important because I think when you are close with somebody, they are probably more willing to overlook certain things that others might think are suspicious when they just don't like you as much, and they're more willing to kind of see the negative than to kind of see the positive and be willing to overlook that. So I think that she's kind of ruining her good relationships, seemingly good relationships, that it felt like for the first 6 episodes of this show, Natalie was in such a great position that she seemed to really blend in with the faithfuls very well for a gamer who a lot of the gamers were out early and early targets, and Natalie was kind of the one exception to that, where and now it feels like a lot of eyes are on her because of this, even though I don't think that that's traitor behavior. I think that's just too obvious. Like if you're a traitor, you're not going to be that obvious about demanding the antidote. So
Yeah.
I don't think that, but I just feel like, unfortunately, this really put a highlight on her where now people are thinking, well, she is the last gamer. And maybe we had this theory before that all the gamers were, that the gamer in the turret was getting at all the gamers to distract from us thinking that it could be them. So it feels like now people are looking back and thinking about other things that are suspicious potentially about her. Whereas if she had just kind of laid a little bit lower, I don't think they would be thinking that way.
Yeah, I agree. It did seem like a little bit overboard. I think in that regard, I mean, I just overall like you don't want to put too much of a spotlight on yourself and her just really like going for that antidote and not really allowing anyone else to give it or take it from her. And I mean, especially when she was up with Tara against it, like she just like fought for it there and like grabbed it and took it. So I think that's not a great look, especially with what you're saying about like the things that people can bring up and just people not really trusting her as much because like they don't or they just don't really enjoy spending time with her as much as maybe other people in the castle. So that's not great for her longevity. But maybe they'll keep her because they're like, well, no one who's a traitor who would do that. So there's
Yeah,
both.
but it doesn't seem like people are thinking that way for the most part. Like it does feel like a lot of people are suspicious of her. They just were more suspicious of Lisa. Yeah,
That's true.
but it does feel like she's kind of next on the list, maybe between
Yeah.
her and Colton. I don't know, but I did you think I kind of thought okay, then this is why I said at the beginning that this episode was different than I thought it was going to be because I actually had this weird idea in my mind that the banquet was going to be the vast majority of this episode, and it really wasn't. Like it was just the
Yeah.
first like less than half of the episode. And I thought that Natalie and Tara were going to get in like a physical fight over this antidote. Like
Oh
when
boy.
they both got up and like I thought they were going to be like grabbing it and trying to take it from each other. And I thought that was going to be like why Alan had been saying for so long that this was like the most dramatic thing that's ever happened on the Traitors before. And I thought it was going to be because there was an actual like fight over the antidote, which did not happen at all.
Yeah, no, it did seem like that like they cut it short. I guess I don't know if they because I guess each person like went around and talked and they only showed us like a few people of them
Mhm.
like going through that. So they could have made that scene a lot longer. But they just cut to the chase. It seemed like and showing us what was happening at the dinner. Because then Alan came in and reveals that Jam Jam was murdered and he gets carried out by the guards. They like made it so some dramatic thing. And then as Jim Jim is leaving, he yells out that Lisa kissed him on the cheek and he thinks that she's the traitor. So then immediately Lisa goes into denying of no, no, it was just an ear kiss. I didn't actually kiss him. And obviously, like, that's a bit controversial, I think, in terms of like, well, should Jam Jam have been allowed to say anything there in that moment as he's leaving? I thought that it was fine. Like, he was trying to help out the rest of the faithfuls there, like, and giving them a clue in what happened to him. It wasn't the exact thing that killed him, but it was right, and guessing that she was a traitor. So I think that it was interesting that he was allowed to say that, but I think it was right. Like, I don't think they should have been he should have been not allowed to say anything.
I actually disagree. I think that
Oh.
he should not have been allowed to say anything because to me the whole point of the show is that two people can argue and say different things, have different perspectives of what happened or what somebody said or did, but you don't know who to trust because you don't know who a faithful and who is a traitor. Here, Jam Jam, like pointed out later in the episode by multiple people, have no reason to lie. He's already been murdered.
Yeah.
And now, because he was already murdered, they know 100% certainty that he was a faithful. And so, why would he lie about what happened with Lisa? I
Hmm.
guess, could he have been wrong about what it was that killed him? Possible. But it was such a short, I mean, at least from what we saw, there wasn't that much that happened. And Jam Jam didn't point out anything else that he thought was suspicious that he did or accidentally like touched or said or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like he was so confident that this was the one thing that seemed slightly suspicious that happened to him during that time. And so to me, it just made it way too obvious that Lisa was a traitor. It took out the suspense from the rest of the episode to me, and I think it would have been a lot more interesting if they could have all debated, well, did Jam Jam say anything to you about things that were suspicious, or like I just think that this took out a lot of the air from the rest of the episode, which was still very good, but I think it could have been a lot better if there wasn't so much certainty from so many people that Lisa probably was a traitor.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think obviously with them like just not really knowing what's happening, like it creates more of that, like more questioning and knowing, like they don't fully know of who it could be, but here it was like kind of like, yeah, they kind of know. They kind
Yeah.
of know it's Lisa now. But I
Yeah.
don't know, he could have been wrong though, so you just never know.
He could have been wrong, but I think, like, for instance, Jam Jam said he whispered, I think it was to Johnny maybe at the beginning when they all
Oh
sat
yeah.
down, like, "Oh, I Lisa kissed me on the cheek." But so Johnny could have later on brought that up, but then the question is, well, do we trust Johnny? Is Johnny trying to distract? Like, I think that then, it could have been a whole game of telephone of how much do we trust him? Is he just trying to distract us? Whereas Jam Jam said this to everybody now. And so there's no question of, did he really say this? Is this really what he thought? And I think that it just, I think, would have made it a little bit more interesting. But, I think that because of how they did it, we got this big dramatic moment of him getting dragged out, and I don't know how you stop him from saying anything. I guess unless you tell them before, like, whoever is murdered, you're not allowed to say anything. But I guess besides that, it gave us a good dramatic moment. So hey, I can't be too upset.
Yeah, exactly. Jam Jam just needed to get it out. So he had to share what he wanted to share. But then the next morning, Lisa, Candace, and Rob are the first ones to arrive. So just all the traders there together. And they discuss how Rob had voted for Lisa at the last round table. And Rob said that he had no other choice since he was so close and vocal about not thinking Ron was a traitor, and also so close to Colton. So then Lisa and Candace were saying that they have to like make sure that there is their priority of like keeping them safe, and that it was too close of a vote, that he shouldn't have done that. And that basically he's gonna need their help, or at least he's gonna need their help for just getting through the day since she got so much heat on her. But obviously we were talking about this last week, but with Rob taking that shot and voting for Lisa there was obviously a big move on his part. We weren't totally sure how this was going to be this week. And I feel like at this point, like, I don't know, for damage control in terms of how he can fix things with the traitors. I mean, now we also later on, obviously in the episode, know what's happening too, so it's a little bit different thinking back on this now. But in this moment, did you think that it was too late for Rob to try to fix things with his traitor friends?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, and
Yeah.
it's just it's too far gone at this point. I think I don't know that he needs to continue adding, like putting his voice so vocally against Lisa and Candace. I think that maybe the right thing for him to have done at this point is just to kind of don't push back against anything that people say about Lisa, but don't add a ton to it. Like, I think you just can kind of be a good sounding board for people and not seem suspicious by saying, well, I've thought about it and I don't know that I think Lisa's a traitor anymore. But I think you can very slyly contribute to conversations that are against somebody else and push that narrative forward a bit, but don't try to defend Lisa too much. And I think that maybe there's some where that in a couple of weeks it will blow over if Lisa doesn't get murdered tonight. And if you're able to get it onto Natalie or someone else, then maybe that gives you enough time to repair that relationship a bit. Like there probably won't be the trust there that there used to be, but maybe you can try to make it work as best as possible.
Yeah, I agree. It did seem like Rob kind of dug his own grave there with his other traders, with them just really not being able to trust him if he was so vocal about Lisa with the vote. I mean, and then, I mean, in that roundtable, I think it wasn't as bad as we're seeing in this episode. But I think that overall, like, you want to stay true to your faithful, or to, if you're faithful with your faithfuls and your traitor, stay with your traitors. And so with this, I think Rob is gonna have to do some damage control majorly now, but I don't know if it might be too late for him. I mean, he has close relationships with other people, but obviously a traitor is more powerful and getting being more vocal about someone that could sway it towards you. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, like to me, I guess damage control maybe isn't the right word because to me that would be like trying to walk back what
Uh,
he did. And I don't think that he needs to do that. Like, I think if he votes, if he thinks the tides are turning against Lisa, vote for her. Like, don't try to switch paths at that point. It's too late. But if it seems like there is just as much suspicion on someone else, add to that a little bit more than you add to Lisa. But don't, if somebody comes at you and says, like, look, I think Lisa's really suspicious and here's why, then I think you can say, yeah, I agree with you. I think that is very suspicious, but, don't add other elements to it. Like, I think he did in this episode multiple times. He was the one kind of leading the charge against Lisa, it seemed like. And I
yeah.
think that was maybe it was a little bit too much at times, but I think that he was probably not wrong in thinking just got to keep going in that direction.
Yeah, I agree because it was already discussed at the round table. So I think once, especially after he voted for Lisa, he can't really like take back his word and not thinking that Lisa's a
Right.
traitor anymore. Like that would be more suspicious on him. So he just
Mhm.
had to double down on it basically and
Yeah.
stick with it and hope the rest of the cast would also think Lisa's still a traitor. So it kind
Mhm.
of seemed that way from their conversation that he wasn't really changing his mind on that. But yeah, it was interesting to see them all there together as they started the breakfast. But then as more people walked in, they started discussing Natalie's behavior at the banquet, as well as multiple accusations against Steven. So we kind of discussed this a little bit before, but would you have found either of them to be suspicious, or should Lisa be the obvious target today?
Yeah, I don't think that I don't this is so hard to say because it's like we are such armchair quarterbacks of like, oh yeah, it's obvious it's not either of them. Like, look at Lisa. But I don't think that I would have found Natalie's behavior to be traitor behavior. And I don't know that I mean, I think I maybe would have been a little bit more suspicious of Steven, to be honest, because
Mhm.
it seemed like I would have I think my eye would have been on the cards, because
Me too.
those were so, like, it was such a obvious red herring to us, but I think that that would have felt weird to me to see those there and to think, like, those aren't there for no reason. And
Yeah.
so whoever did something suspicious with the cards, but, like, then the question would have been, well, did Jam Jam have a card? Like, if it was Kristen that ended up being murdered, then yeah, I
Yeah.
think that Steven, all eyes would have been on Steven potentially. But because it was Jam Jam, then maybe all the suspicion of Steven would have gone away for me. But it seemed like, was it Eric that kind of said, brought up Steven a little bit and said, like,
Yeah.
so it seemed like some people were still suspicious of him even that morning, which is weird to me because in theory, nothing about that was had to do with the murder.
Yeah, I agree. It did seem like they were trying to reach for things a little bit in these conversations that they were having. I mean, obviously, we know they're not the traitors, so them just talking about it, you're like, no, like, why are they thinking that? But I mean, obviously, you have to think through other scenarios, and these were the next two suspicious people that they could think of from the banquet. So I think it made sense for them to talk about them, but they're not like main priorities.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to talk through everything in that castle, I think. It's good to just kind of go through everybody and every theory possible so that you don't get tunnel vision. Because I think that's famously in season one, we had a couple of people in that cast who I can't think of their names offhand right now, but that had very tunnel vision on Kate Chastain. And it was just roundtable after roundtable. She was just the only person who they were suspecting, and because of that, they missed everything with Suri. And it took them a long time to figure out anyone else because they were just so tunnel vision on one person. And I think that's a big mistake that you can make in this game when you start to see different signs about somebody. So I think it's good to just kind of talk through everything, even if you're not actually really suspicious of them and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like they just have to. It's part of the show.
And what else do you have
And
to do in there?
yeah. But then Candace works to get the faithfuls focusing more on Natalie over Lisa, as Candace wants to keep her fellow traitor Lisa safe, also fellow housewife. But then Tara and Natalie talk to clear the air, and Lisa walks in. And Lisa's asking why Natalie was so intent on getting the antidotes, which is a good question. I think it's fair for her to ask for it. But then Natalie says she was worried since all the gamers were gone except for her. And then accidentally says the word we again. Here it comes up again when she says we murdered one instead of banished. So Lisa, as she's trying to go on the rounds here and keep herself hopefully safe, she uses that against Natalie and telling Dorinda and Mark about it in the car on the way to the mission. And then she also tells a group of people in the kitchen about it later. So Lisa's on her campaigning to keep herself here and go after Natalie instead. But as we saw this earlier in the season as well, with slip ups, with saying we instead of I, or not even just I, but just like the traitors in general, not just saying that we as a collective they're getting the target there and thinking, oh well, they're saying we, that means that they're a traitor. But obviously then we know that's not true. So do you think that they should stop focusing so much on that evidence, as we've seen it being wrong every time?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's so easy to slip up in this game with the wording and things
Yeah.
like that, with murdered and banished, and I feel like we do it all the time
Yeah.
as viewers, and it's even as players, especially for people who aren't as familiar with the show. Like, I think if maybe you were somebody who comes onto the show and you've watched every version of it, every international season, everything, like Rob Sesternino, he is probably not going to as easily slip up with something like that because he's just so much more familiar with it and has talked about it so much and distinguished between what the verbiage is for each person in the game. But for somebody like Portia or somebody like, well, Natalie, I don't know how big of, I mean, she's a gamer, but I don't know how much she's watched of Traitors. But I think that it's very easy to do that. And we saw it with Peppermint in season 2 that Trishelle latched onto that and was so sure that she had caught a traitor, and it didn't end up being Peppermint. And here we saw it with Portia, same thing. Now, Portia made multiple slip ups, which I think probably would have started to make me think that she was potentially a traitor.
Yeah.
But for just Natalie to make one slip up like that, I don't think that that's evidence of any kind. And I think that people, unless if it just happens one time or once in a blue moon, I think you just kind of have to not put that into evidence because it probably doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and especially with us knowing how Lisa is a traitor and she's just trying to clear her name, it kind of just seemed that she could grasp onto that, even though it's not really true evidence, and she knows that as well, obviously. So I think that that's just become a theme throughout the season. So she's like, let's just keep it on the theme and think that maybe because she's saying we, that means she's a traitor, but it's not true. But
Yeah,
it's
and I don't begrudge Lisa at all for trying to
yeah,
use that. I think that was good. I mean, use what you can in that
yeah.
instance. But I think for Tara to then, and I don't know if Tara necessarily really believed that that one slip up. I think she was already very suspicious of Natalie. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, that to me, Natalie's behavior at the banquet was not traitorous. But I think that because now the spotlight is on her because of it, every little slip up like that, people are going to start latching onto. Whereas if she had allowed herself to kind of fall back in the shadows a little bit there and not made herself such a made such a spectacle out of it, then a slip up like that people probably would have fully just ignored.
Agreed. Definitely. I feel like with that, it's just they already are making sure they're paying attention to it, so it's like an extra thing on their list. But then also Rob was talking to Mark and Maura and Steven and throws Lisa under the bus here again. And he says that anytime that two people have a different version of events, one of them must be lying. And Jam Jam would have had no reason to lie since he was already murdered at that point. So here, Rob really just digging more and trying to get Lisa to get out, seems like.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of where I was like, Rob, I don't think that you needed to do this. Like, I think that he was already was in such a good position where he had voted for Lisa last week, which I don't necessarily think was a terrible move, but I think that at this point it's like you don't need to lead the charge against Lisa anymore. Like there's no real benefit for you with Lisa going home. I think there is benefit potentially to people thinking that you are after, like you were suspicious of Lisa and suspicious enough to vote for her. I think that's a good thing because he didn't go in the whole like Dan Giesling, I mean, he's an incredible Big Brother player. He went about it all wrong with Phaedra. And he made such a spectacle of that. He was front and center, the first one to really like to suspect Phaedra, and her name had not been floating around like that before. With Rob, I think what he did so perfectly and brilliantly with Lisa was that he just kind of added to what was already there enough to where it seemed like he was not fighting against it by any means. And in fact, he was one of the leaders, but he wasn't the one person leading that charge. And I think that now it feels like he kind of is. And that is a dangerous position to be in, I think, because then once Lisa's a traitor, I could see people start to think, well, Rob was kind of the one to lead the charge there. Do you think that was traitor on traitor? And that's where he can get slipped up.
Oh yeah. No, that's what I was worried about too. I thought that because he was not like so sure in this moment, but obviously like we know he is a traitor, but just being so sure about a traitor, that's been evidenced for in the past, as you're saying with Dan and Phaedra, of it just being so obvious there that if someone's after one and they're a traitor, and then like you're like, oh, that person like really knew they were a traitor. How would they know? Oh, they must be a traitor. So that's what I was worried for in the conversation as well, with it just being so like Rob going after Lisa again here. Like it's just not the best move because obviously people are already speculating her, and he doesn't need to be the one to lead the conversation. Like he can chime in, but he doesn't need to start it. So that was
Right,
definitely
because last week Colton was the one really leading the charge, and I think that he had such a good alibi where he could say, "I was trusting my closest friend in this castle, Colton," and I think he can still say that because is the one who originated it. He still was not the one who originated it. I think that he just kind of put himself out there, maybe a little bit too much, where he's leaving himself vulnerable to be looked at in that way.
yeah, definitely. So we'll have to see how Rob can handle more of this. Well, I mean, in the episode, obviously we know what happens, but later on in the
And I'm
season.
glad. Look, I will say I'm glad that he's putting himself in this position because I actually think that if he is able to overcome it and not be looked at in that way, I think it's even more impressive. So I think if he can make it to the end, win this game, or at least like just make it really far and get through this, I think that I will be even more impressed than I already have been with him, which is very impressed.
Agreed. I think it's definitely could be good if he doesn't get caught, but if he's gonna get caught, then it's not, obviously.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait to see what happens there. But next in this episode, we get to the mission, and the players have to race up to the top of a hill and collect as much gold as possible along the way. And the six people who get the most gold, they'll get the right to play for the dagger, which gives the player 2 votes at one of the next 4 roundtables. So, what did you think about this dagger twist?
So this is something that we saw in Traders UK this season as well, but they did it very differently. And I won't spoil any results of Traders UK, though I will say it is an incredible season, my favorite Trader season I've ever seen this last season of Traders UK. So I highly recommend everyone who has not already go watch it. It's going to be on Peacock the day that the finale of Traders US drops. So the whole season will be on Peacock. So go watch it. But I think that so the way that they did it there was that the traders, it was at the banquet actually,
Oh,
that they were told that the traders would get to choose who got the dagger. So once they were anonymously, someone was given the dagger, the traders could give it to themselves or they could give it to a faithful. So then that left everybody, all the faithfuls, to wonder, did a trader give it to themselves or did they give it to somebody? Or are they trying to frame somebody? Like there was a lot of speculation, which I loved. It caused a lot of paranoia. Here, they did it very differently, where it was one in the mission. And I will say I liked the way they did it on Traders UK better, but I like the dagger. I mean, I think that giving somebody 2 votes I think is very interesting. On in the UK, they had to use it that round table. They
okay.
didn't get the 4 round tables. I think it's maybe a little too OP here because it's like giving somebody kind of in a way like a version of like an immunity idol on Survivor, but obviously less powerful. But I think that giving somebody 2 votes is the perfect amount of power to give somebody because it's not guaranteed that they can sway things, but I think that it's desirable enough to want to win that. But I always prefer when something isn't necessarily won by just who's the strongest or fastest or whatever. Especially in a game like this where really like that doesn't matter for anything.
I know. I agree. I feel like it just it's an interesting twist to this too because obviously they don't really. I mean, they're getting the money for the prize pot, but just watching them collect money is never a fun aspect of these
Yeah.
challenges or the missions as they call them. So I like that this dagger was part of it and just seeing of who could end up with it. And there's that obviously more competition with that too because you want to try to get that advantage. It's not just like the shield advantage, which shields have been kind of not really wanted this season. Also, or not really sought after. So it was good to see a different kind of advantage here. in
Yeah.
this mission.
And actually, I wouldn't be mad at them sprinkling in daggers instead of shields every now and again,
Yeah.
because I think that I always like the shields best when they're hidden and the traitors don't know who has it. I think that that's a very, very fun twist on things. But I would say, do a mission that where somebody can win a shield, and then the next week win something where someone can win a dagger, and then somebody can win a shield, and then, like, sprinkle in different types of advantages. Maybe I think could keep the players on their toes and adds a little bit of uncertainty and unpredictability into the game that I think could be very fun.
Yeah, I think I like that too. I feel like it just adds some different elements to the game that we don't get always. So that
I
could be
was I
interesting.
was saying to somebody the other day that I think it's very funny how Survivor is constantly making people lose their votes, and here on Traders they're adding votes.
Yeah, that's good comparison there.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I mean it's a good power to have an extra vote. So
I always prefer add
yeah,
votes.
yeah,
That's fine. Don't take away people's votes. Or at least not as often as they do on Survivor. But I think that I like the dagger. Yeah.
yeah. I would want to see more of it. But for this mission, the six who ended up with the most gold were Colton, Eric, Mark, Natalie, Rob, and Steven. So then Rob had the most of the gold. So that gave him an advantage to then when they were playing for the dagger, he was the one who got to choose of questioning everyone who read their different tablets they had in front of them. So Colton, Eric, Mark, Natalie, and Steven each had a tablet that four of the tablets have an X and then one had a dagger. And Rob had a question each of them to ask if they had the dagger or not, or no one would say no, but if they had the dagger. I mean, they were saying no.
Everyone
No
would
one
say
would say
no.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I said it the wrong way.
Unless you don't want Rob to get it, you could lie and say you do have it, knowing you don't, so
Yeah,
that maybe he would potentially choose you and be wrong, but then you would really make an enemy out of him. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, that's a different strategy that no one tried here. They all just
Yeah.
said no. And as they were saying that, he was also getting to ask them a couple other questions, so he was able to understand more of what they were saying and if they were lying to him. And then if he picked correctly, then he wins it, and if not, then the person with a dagger would keep it. So here, Natalie had a dagger, and Rob did choose hers correctly. So that was interesting. He was like,
Did
"Yeah, I was
you could you
able to
tell
tell."
Natalie was lying?
Yeah,
Yeah, you could too.
I could tell. So if we could tell, obviously Rob was gonna tell. I mean, not
Yeah.
obviously, but he
That was
seemed pretty
surprising to
into.
me that she's not a good liar.
No, she was looking around and like licked her lips. I was like, "All
And
right,
she like couldn't
Natalie."
even say she doesn't have it. She like said it in a weird roundabout way that was like you would choose wrong or something. Like I don't know what she said, but it wasn't like she couldn't just say like no, I don't have it very
Yeah,
confidently. So yeah, she was pretty obvious to me at least.
I thought so too. So obviously then Natalie didn't get to keep it, and Rob gets it. So do you think that Rob will save it until his last chance to use it, or you think he'll use it on himself before if he's in danger?
I think at this point in the episode, I would have said probably that I think he'll be able to last 4 weeks without being in too much danger that he would need to use it. I think by the end of the episode, and we'll get to it, there is starting to be some suspicion on him. So I question that a little bit more, but I don't feel like he's going to need to use it like next week. I don't know how quickly though other targets, other people in the spotlight are going to start going home, and then maybe people will start looking at Rob a little bit more. And Candace, if Candace can stay in a couple more weeks, I could see her start to really put Rob's name in people's minds and maybe start to turn the tide a little bit against him. But if he's able to do some good work here, I think he could very well last 4 rounds without having to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see that. I don't know. As of now, I also like in this moment, I was like, oh, he'll be able to keep this. Like he's got so much power in the game now. And then now after the end of the episode, I'm like, maybe he's gonna need this. But
Yeah.
and he also did tell the other players who got the final like option to get the dagger that he has it, but to keep it a secret from everyone else. So do you think that these six will actually keep this secret?
No,
Yeah.
I don't. I think that this was very, very smart by Rob, though. I thought he did an incredible, incredible job here. This was potentially the most impressed I have been with Rob this whole time, was in this moment outside of the castle. Because he just brought these six together. And it felt like this was this team and they had done this thing together and they were holding this secret. And like it felt like he was doing such a great job of just making them feel like they're a part of something. And I just it felt like there was this energy between them. So I think right now, yes, they are all good on keeping the secret. But I think that in a couple of weeks, whether it's next episode, the episode after that, one of them's going to spill it. And then the word's going to get out. And it's just at that point, once all it takes is one person to tell one person, and then they tell somebody else, and then the word just gets out. So I
Yeah.
don't think, and that could be what potentially puts Rob in a little bit of hot water also when the other six find out and then they're like, well, why didn't you tell me? Why did you have to feel the need to keep this secret? Like I think that that could cause some people to mistrust Rob a little bit, even if they don't necessarily see it as traitorous. I just think that they could in the same way that I felt that way about Natalie, it could really just kind of put an unnecessary spotlight on him.
Yeah. No, I see that. I think, but I don't know. With Rob's personality, I think he could get away with it more.
Yeah, I mean, he could get away with anything. So,
Yeah.
and I would let him get away with anything happily.
Yeah, I know his pretty face is getting the charm of everyone.
Who was it? Was it I can't remember whose exit interview it was, but somebody was saying that nobody suspected Rob in the beginning because he's just so good looking that he's hard to look at, and so you can't tell, like you don't want to make eye contact with him for too long, so it's like you can't tell whether he's like suspicious or not because you're just like not looking at him.
I saw that too, but I'm forgetting who it was. But I
I want
remember
to say it was
seeing.
Mora, but then that doesn't make any sense. Why was Mora doing an exit? Like,
No, yeah, she
so
wasn't. She's still there.
right, but she was
Um,
the current players were doing some interviews over the last couple of weeks, but I don't think that it was her. I think it was an exit interview, but I can't remember who
okay,
it was.
yeah,
Maybe it was Tiffany.
maybe it
I
was
don't know.
Tiffany.
Anyways, it
Well,
doesn't matter.
you'll probably know this if you're listening, or you'll find
I
out.
know somebody's screaming at their phones right
Yeah.
now.
But then we get to the round table, and we started off with Lisa talking about Natalie's slip up from earlier, and that Tara confirms that she heard it too. But Natalie says Lisa's just bringing this up to get the heat off her, which true. So it kind of went
No
off
lies
this
detected.
topic kind of quickly. But what did you think about this coming up?
Yeah, I mean, of course it was going to come up. And I think that Lisa was right to, Lisa had so much suspicious on her. I can't say that today. I don't know why I can't say that today. But she was already so suspect and her name is already out there and she knows it. Like, why not just lead the round table? It's like normally I would say that leading the round table, starting it off, is maybe not a great move for a lot of people. But I think that with Lisa, it's like, might as well go for it. And it's not gonna, if you didn't lead it, you were still gonna have the spotlight on you at one point at this roundtable. So I think that this was fine. And Tara confirming it, I think, was good, really good for Lisa, because it seems like at the very least now people assume that what she is saying is true, whether it's deflection or not. I think the fact that people can kind of assume that she's not lying and making this up is a good thing for her.
Oh, definitely. I think that it made sense to say it and also to have Tara confirming. It just is a little bit of a limelight here of it being like, oh, maybe there's going to be something that sways here, but it didn't really stick. Because then the attention turns to Jam Jam's final words about Lisa, but then Dorinda was sticking up for Lisa and gets into a fight with Mora here at the round table. So
So random.
yeah, that was a crazy moment.
I love these little side plots that we've been getting. I feel like especially with Mora over the last couple round tables, it feels like where Mora's just getting in like random tiny little arguments with people, and it's like, where did this come from? Like Mora barely says anything, it feels like, but when she does get into it with somebody, she clocks, she clears.
True.
And I love Mora, and so I love these little moments that we get of her because we just don't get enough. And with Dorinda too, we haven't been getting nearly enough Dorinda for my liking in this season.
I
And
know.
she's been saying that she said on Watch What Happens Live the other day that she got into this big argument with Caroline Stanberry that never aired. And I'm like, why are we not seeing this? Dorinda clearly was being Dorinda in this castle, and they're just not showing it for whatever reason. So
Wow.
I hate that, but I love that we get this little, at least this little moment with Mora, because it's like, okay, there's the Dorinda and the Mora that we know and love.
Yeah, they're really editing Dorinda out or just like making her look the way she is, which is very calm and and not really talking as much when obviously I'm sure there's more that's going on that we're not seeing as we didn't see that fight. So I'm sure there are other things too.
Yeah.
So I know, but I wish we got more Dorinda. But it made
Maybe
sense for
we're
her
not
also
getting it
to
because we're going to get a lot in the last 5 episodes. Who
uh,
knows?
maybe. But as she's also a housewife, I think it made sense for her to stick up for Lisa, even if she maybe thought Lisa could be suspicious. She doesn't want to go against someone of her own at this point.
Mhm.
So I think it made sense for Dorinda here to say that. But
Yeah, I mean,
then,
Dorinda has said like that she at this point really didn't think that Lisa was a traitor. So
okay,
I mean, she's I think being very honest
true.
in defending Lisa, but yeah, I mean, I think that her friendship with Lisa was very blinding to Dorinda, and Dorinda may just not have the best radar when it comes to clocking traitors.
True. That's true. I mean, not everyone is, so it's fair. Especially in this castle, it's the first time that, or not the first, but the first real traitor they're getting out at this point. It seems like, or at least close
I
to
know.
it.
I keep forgetting that they already got out Donna, who was technically a traitor, because we
Yeah,
never saw Donna in the turret. So I just keep forgetting that she was a traitor.
I know. But at this point, episode 7, like pretty far to go with not getting one of the turret traitors. Um,
Yeah, I would have to look back because I think famously Traitors Canada 2, no, yeah, 2 was the longest anyone went without, I think the Faithfuls went without getting a traitor out. I would have to see. I don't remember what episode it was, but I mean, clearly this season, if we don't count Donna, I would be curious if
yeah.
they broke their record there.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know that too. But we'll have to follow up on that. Because then at the round table, now Rob fully turns on Lisa and urges everyone to think logically since Natalie wouldn't be so obvious to beg for an antidote if she were a traitor. And Lisa always pretends to forget or denies everything when she's confronted with the evidence of what people are sharing. She just denies or says, "Oh, I don't remember," and all of that. So I think that was a good point for Rob to bring up. Obviously, we know that Rob's also a traitor, but here he really put it down into sharing that he really believes on Lisa's a traitor as well, which we know he knows is true. But in this case, he has to pretend that he doesn't know it for sure.
This was so funny to me because if you are a Real Houses of Beverly Hills fan, you will famously remember that in season 7, Lisa Rinna said that Kim Richards was close to death and started to talk about her alcoholism and stuff, and then later claimed to completely forget that that conversation ever happened. And it was like that and multiple other things that season where she was just like, when she was confronted with something, she would just say, I don't remember saying that. And it was all this like pretend amnesia. And now she is using the same tactics to get away with not remembering this didn't happen. I don't remember that. It's just funny to me that she's kind of using those same tactics that she did when she was clearly kind of caught in something on Beverly Hills, that she is now using the same tactics on the Traitors, and people are catching on to it just as much.
Yeah. Oh, I was also realizing that too. Like of just watching it, of knowing when she was getting attacked and she just would say, "Oh, I don't know," or "That didn't happen." Like obviously just keeping on denying it and pretend amnesia, like that situation, like I feel like is just not the best look on her part. Like it seemed at this point very obvious that she would be the one to go home, which was true. Is the vote ended up being 9-2 to 1-1, with Lisa being banished, and Candace voted for Rob. So, what did you think about that? And that she said she couldn't vote for Lisa, and so she she had to vote for Rob there.
I think this was a really bad move, to be honest. I think it's just one of those things, like I kind of was saying earlier, that I just think it's unnecessary attention on yourself. And I get it. It's, you don't, maybe she thought that voting for Lisa, voting for a housewife would have been suspicious. But I think that at that point, like, vote for Natalie, vote for somebody who's already had attention on them. And I think that people would have understood if she vote for Natalie, even if maybe the attention had gotten off of her a bit. Like, I think you could just say, like, I couldn't vote for another housewife. I really wasn't confident enough that it was Lisa to be able to vote for her and feel like I could justify it to myself. And I just, Natalie was the other one with attention on her. Vote for Colton. I don't know. Vote for somebody who already had like attention on them, whether it was this roundtable or past roundtable. And I just think that Rob, it felt like it was just pettiness on
Oh
Candace's
yeah.
part. And there was no heat on Rob. There was no like, it feels like people are bound to look at this as being very suspicious and weird. And it just felt like she could have picked a lot of better options.
Yeah, that is definitely felt like more of like a retaliation vote rather than like there wasn't really strategy
Yeah.
in that. It seemed like she just wanted to punish Rob and make him feel the consequences for him getting out a fellow traitor. And I think that it's going to definitely come up in future weeks of them talking through this. And maybe in the next episode, we'll have to see what happens there. But then obviously, Lisa stands up and reveals that she is a traitor, and everyone celebrates, and they got a traitor out. And obviously, I feel like Lisa did as well as she could at this point in the game of and now having all the speculations on her. She did make it pretty far, and I'm happy for that. And I thought, did a great job up until more recent episodes, but she
Yeah.
did a great job and brought some excitement to the castle.
Yeah, and I love that moment that she had in the confessional after she left, where she was getting emotional and talking about how when she left Housewives of Beverly Hills, like that was such a rough time for her, and that this felt like kind of a very healing experience and enjoyable experience. And I loved seeing that because we never really heard Lisa talk about her exit from Beverly Hills, because when she left, she left. She kind of didn't do a lot of interviews afterwards talking about it. She would just kind of try to get away from having to talk about that too much. And it was such a rough time. It was very dark when she left, and she had gotten so absorbed with the show that she wasn't enjoying it anymore. Clearly, the audience hated her at that time, and they booed her at BravoCon when she went on stage. And it was a really, really rough experience. And that was what, 3, 4 years ago. And so now, ever since then, she's reinvented herself. She has really, it seems like, been able to get away from the limelight in very healthy, healing way, I'm sure. And now was able to come back here and be the old Rinna that we knew and loved back in the day when she first started on Beverly Hills, and when she was on that man's show, who we will not talk about, twice actually. And when she was on Dancing with the Stars, she did many shows before that, and it just felt like we got the old Lisa back here. She clearly enjoyed herself a lot, and I hope that this isn't the last we'll see of her, that maybe she'll be on something in the future. I don't think she'll go back to Beverly Hills, but I think that she absolutely could do more reality TV in the future of a different kind, more like this, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I mean, I didn't watch her in Real Housewives, but seeing her here, I think it was really great to get to know her and just seeing her personality. And she definitely felt like she could be herself here. I mean, she couldn't totally be because she was lying also, but in general, that she could be more herself and having close relationships with people in the house and in the castle, and just having that more positive experience and being in TV again. So that's great for her. But then back at the castle, we are hearing some conversations after this round table. First starts with Colton floating Candace's name to Maura and Rob, since Candace kept trying to move the attention off of Lisa at the round table. So that's good evidence there. And Rob doesn't defend Candace. So that was interesting. And also, while this is also happening, we see that Johnny floats Rob's name to Candace. So, and Candace didn't defend him. So it seems here we're having traitor on traitor fighting again. And Candace versus Rob. Do you think that they're gonna turn on each other here, like fully, or they're gonna come together? I don't know. I don't really see them coming together in an agreement, but you think out of the two of them, who's gonna win?
Yeah, I do not think that they are going to come together. I think that I'm curious to see what happens in the turret here when we start next episode, because I think that will be a big determining factor of, do they actively go after each other fully? Like, are they going to just start a traitor civil war in the vein of like a Carolyn and Danielle? Or are they going to just not defend each other and just kind of wait it out until one of them gets like a lot of heat on them and then just bury the knife in their back? So I'm curious to see kind of which direction that will go. But I think, if I have to say, I think Rob's going to win the battle. I
I
think
do
that he
too.
just kind of has his soldiers, it feels like, at this point. And I think that he, I think Candace's vote may have really been her downfall here. And I think it's just one of those like very concrete, weird things that Rob really didn't do, because yes, he voted for Lisa a lot both the last 2 weeks, but now they know that Lisa was a traitor. Whereas I think that enough people aren't convinced that Rob is a traitor that I think Candace's vote for him feels weird, and they're not. I don't think they'll be able to get Rob out first to clear Candace in that regard. And even if they
Yeah.
do, she did it when she was the only vote for him, and then it could make her look even more suspicious. So I don't know. I really feel like they're going to look at Candace before they look at Rob.
I agree. I think, I mean, especially with her really standing up for Lisa is another point. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they're both housewives, but just in general, when your fellow traitor is getting the heat, you're going to want to stand up for them, but Rob wasn't. So in this case, like Candace is going to get that heat versus I feel like not as much on Rob, because they're going to be like, well, Rob was going after Lisa. Like, why would he be a traitor? So
And he
it
did
will
it
be,
smartly, where he wasn't the one to be the first, like, draw the first blood there. Like, he let Colton do that first and then went along with it, even though he put more attention to himself later on. I think Candace here is like just throwing Rob's name out there on a vote where maybe they'll think that Candace is just a really bad faithful and like a bad like, Sheree randomly voted for people in season 2 and nobody thought anything of it. So Dolores voted wrong every round and voted for Sandoval all the time. So like, there's thoughts that if Candace can play this well, I think she can get out of it. But I worry that she won't play it off well enough that they won't look at her as being suspicious because of it. I don't know.
yeah, I know. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens, because we do see them together in the turret, and Candace also saying how she needs to kill the snake and all of that. Obviously Rob being the snake here. But who do you think that they will murder next episode?
God, I have no clue, because we didn't
Yeah,
get to see them even like go through their options like we normally do.
I know.
God, I don't know. I mean, it's not going to be Natalie, because clearly she has a lot of sus on her right now. I don't think it's going to be Colton,
Yeah, I think it
because
could be Eric
it could Eric, yeah. He's
or
just
Kristen.
random enough. I think they're going to go for somebody random. I think
Okay.
they are just going to pick somebody because right now they hate each other, Candace and Rob, and they are
Yeah.
not going to be willing to get rid of any of their numbers. You
Yeah.
know, like they're just not going to be willing to sacrifice that. So I think that because of that, it's going to fall for somebody who neither of them are really that close to, and I feel like someone like Eric, maybe Kristen. It's just these people that neither of them seemingly are that close with that they can kind of just be like, okay, I'll agree to it.
Yeah, that's how I see it too. I think it's gonna be one of them, like Eric or Kristen, but we'll have to see what happens. Any other thoughts of this episode?
No, I thought it was a great episode. I think it was, the banquet was so hyped that I think it was overhyped, but I think the episode itself saved it because it was an entertaining episode as a whole, even though the banquet didn't have like this huge, big, grand, incredible moment that I think we were kind of promised. But it was a very good episode as a whole, and I still very much enjoyed it. And I think that we are in for an interesting last 4 or 5 episodes here. So I think it started a little bit slow this season, but I think it's on a good path right now. So I'm excited.
Yes, I agree. It was a good episode. I'm hoping that it continues in this trajectory of it getting better each episode. So we'll be back again next week chatting more traders. So be sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on social media at Let's Chat Reality. And we'll chat with y'all again next week. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye, everyone.